Hello, everyone, and welcome to the W2 Amigos podcast, where we talk about passive investing, real estate, and all the money moves you can make while working your W2 so you can establish your financial freedom. Here to talk about their journey, your hosts, and of course, amigos, Nick Coulter and Xavier Marin. My man X, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing all right, man. Happy post-Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was a little bit different for me. I stayed back with the dog. We only had her for 3 weeks, so had to make sure that she's still getting accustomed to her environment. So I watched football all day, edited podcasts, and had pizza. It was actually quite nice.
Hell yeah. Are you thankful for Cleo?
I am thankful for Cleo. Yes. You can see her there. She's making a guest appearance in the background.
Yeah.
Scoping, because there's like so much to, there's a lot of danger being on the 17th floor of an apartment tower.
Weird flex, but okay. Looks like she's trying to kill one of those birds that managed to survive the freezing cold in Minnesota.
Well, I have to be careful. Like I'm starting to childproof things because she opens doors by herself now. Like she's smart. She'll be able to open doors. I'm just like, geez, I'm just have to create her like at all times. But anyways, how was your Thanksgiving, man?
It was good. Drove up from San Diego to the Inland Empire, spent it at my sister's place, was able to see my dad, my mom, my sister, brother-in-law, 2 kids, and then my sister, her, father and mother-in-law. So my brother-in-law's parents, they have officially moved down to Southern California to be closer to family. So it's really cool. That was like their first Thanksgiving with us. They'll be there for all the events. So we're going to have like a Hanukkah party over at their place. We'll do my niece's birthday. So it was nice to see them. So I'm very thankful I got that opportunity to be able to still spend that time with family. But on the business side, your boy had his first Airbnb guest check in and check out, checked in on the 23rd, checked out to this morning. My wife, Evelyn, managed the entire process. She's doing excellent managing the Airbnb, and the listing is going really well right now, which we'll get into that a little bit here in a couple of minutes, but it's really good. I'm thankful. They already told us basically on DM that they're going to give us a 5-star review. So that's what the game's all about.
Sweet. Talk about Airbnb. I got a text message through one of our podcast recordings earlier today. My cleaner is saying that one of our previous guest dogs just took a shit in our carpet.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm just like, damn it. And he sent me a photo of it just to make sure that there's proof. So,
gross.
You're going to run into, small issues like that. But,
was it a small issue or is it a big issue?
Thankfully, it was a small issue.
Yeah, it was like a little foo-foo shit.
But that payday was like $2,500. I'm just like, I'm not really that mad.
Yeah, I'll take it. It wasn't like a Clio-sized dump then, where it takes up your entire hand.
Jeez. No. It wasn't a Nova-sized dump.
Dude, all right. So for the listeners, my dog has been a smidge on the heavier side than she should be, according to the vet. She's actually down 13 pounds, X. So her poops have been way smaller. It's been really nice.
I bet.
Yeah, but she was dropping bombs and she was in that calorie surplus, though, I can tell you.
In Virginia, yeah, when I take care of her, I'm just walking, I'm like, Jesus, man, you are a big girl.
She stopped double tapping, too, so she stopped double pooping.
Double tapping? I know.
Yeah,
for those, dude, I'm like, I thought you were done.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I used to have to like hold my dog's shit in a bag, not tied off, because she would shit inevitably like 10 feet later, and I didn't want to waste 2 bags.
Well, I didn't know that, so I'm like, we're carrying like 5-pound dumbbells on each side.
It's good for the farmer carries.
Oh man.
All right. Well, why are we here today, X, besides talking about dog feces?
I don't know, Nick. Why are we here today?
We are here today because I actually wanted to have like a super vulnerable and honest moment with all the listeners. And I wanted it to centralize around investing from a place of financial strength, running your numbers, being hyper diligent about that so that you have a plan to fall back on when you feel like crap. Inevitably, when you invest, it is the largest amount of money you typically put into anything. You're going to freak out a little bit. And as you invest in higher cost assets, you're going to freak out more if you're not careful. So I want to play a little scenario for you guys that recently happened to me. So I bought this $1.45 million duplex in San Diego. I mean, flex, right? 1.45, put 15% down. So I, in one fail swoop, went from a savings rate of having, and I kid you not, guys, I had over 100 months of financial runway down to 4 months. at least 4 months if no money came in additionally. And I started to freak out. Well, why did I start to freak out? So I ran my numbers on my Airbnb. Our mortgage, all entail, is $9,800 a month. And basically what I needed to do was book an average of 70% occupancy at $450 a night, give or take. And that would cover my entire expense for my mortgage, including supplies, running the Airbnb, and everything like that. And then my wife and I would get to live in the most beautiful city in the United States for free. Well, we did everything we could to get that listing up right away. And when it got up, it wasn't booking. We went 3 days without a booking, and I was freaking the fuck out. And I was freaking the fuck out because I was looking at the first of the month in January. I have this $9,800 note due. I still have my property in Redlands. That note's due. That's $2,310 or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God, we only have X amount in our savings accounts, like blah, blah, blah. I started like literally freaking out. And my wife will tell you, like, I was impossible to be around. I was nervous. Anytime we had to spend money, I was complaining about it. And it was money as simple as, hey, we need to buy new hand towels for the Airbnb. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like crazy. We can't afford all these expenses. So I'm losing my mind. And I wanted the listeners to hear what I did to calm down, to rely and then lean back on my numbers, because I was so diligent doing all of my math and really making sure that I underwrote the deal properly. I was able to calm down and not want to jump off the Coronado Bridge, because I'm telling you, man, that financial stress, I hadn't felt that in 2.5 years. I was losing my goddamn mind.
I love that you recommended to do an episode like this, because a lot of people always talk about the good things about real estate. Let's peel back the onion and talk about like sometimes what you're truly feeling inside, because yeah, that shit can be scary. And I'm definitely excited to kind of go through this, right? So you can walk our listeners through your mindset, your numbers, be completely transparent, just so that you can see like, hey, you're going to feel this way. It's okay as long as you have reserves and you have a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's dig into kind of what was making me feel so bad. So if I looked at my expenses, I wasn't really sure exactly how much we were spending per month over the last 3 or 4 months. And the reason I wasn't very sure is we were living in Redlands in a house hack where 100% of our mortgage was being covered and 100% of our expenses. My wife and I make really good money at our W-2s. I've been selling some houses and helping people close on deals. So I've been getting some commission checks. So money's been very bountiful. So I was feeling, figuratively speaking, like $1 million, like nothing could really hurt. So that was, I would say, the first learning lesson for me is I got away from keeping a super diligent budget and tracking all of my expenses. And so I got away from really understanding exactly how much money was going out, how much money was coming in every month. And that really started to lead to my level of anxiety. So I was like, first lesson learned is if you guys are not currently, I would build in a routine. I suggest you do it weekly, so you really get an understanding of how much money is going out and into your accounts. But at bare minimum, every month you should review all of your expenses and all of your income to see if you were net positive in cash flow or negative, and how much each month, so you can understand exactly where your financial position is. So here's what I did to correct that. I pulled open an Excel sheet and I kept it very simple. I actually seen this Excel sheet for my own protection. I'm not going to show you guys everything, but what I will tell you is I made 3 columns in my Excel sheet. It was the name budget item, the category, and then debit or credit. And then I basically did a math formula to sum that at the end to show my cash flow. So basically I'll run you guys through everything that we had, right? So we had on the credit side, we had our rent by the bedroom income. We had my pay, my wife's pay. We split our pay into separate accounts. So we each get like $500 every 2 weeks to go do whatever the hell we want to. It's like fun money that, your spouse can't tell you anything. Really has helped our relationship, but that is all of our income. That's the only credits we have. So when you think of it that way, like, oh, I only have these sources of income, I started to freak out. So I put those on paper for the month. And then I went, all right, let's list all of our expenses. So I had my Redlands house, the PITI on that. I had my new house in San Diego, the Boundary House, the PITI there, the 401k loan, the insurance that we have for our cars, the internet for our Redlands house, the internet for our San Diego house, our water, electricity, gas, and utilities for both houses, our QuickBooks so that we can manage our expenses for tax season, And then we have my super key, my cold calling software, our Calendly expenses, the Canva for our creation, Costco, our gardener. That was all business expenses. So those cannot go away because those are the bare minimum of our business expenses. And then I listed out our personal expenses. So our vet insurance, gas, grocery bills, Netflix, Spotify, our gym membership, cell phones, and Prime. And then my wife's trainer. We looked at all those things and said, okay, what can we cut? I could, if I needed to, cut down on grocery because right now we had like $750 a month on grocery, which is like a really large budget. We could cut that down. We could switch our cell phone provider from Verizon to something cheaper and save money there. We could cancel my wife's personal trainer if we wanted to, that we could save there. Gas is kind of a fixed cost for us because I drive back and forth for work. And my wife works from home. So I put that at 500, which was a high estimation, but just wanted to make sure it's going to probably come closer to 300, but I'd rather be overestimate my budget than underestimate. So then I summed all that up. And basically what it showed me is that I had $2,000 in negative cash flow a month. So what did that do for me? Great question, Nick. that allowed me to calm the fuck down because in our savings, right? And this is, let's say I don't close another commission check at all. This is just a W-2 income. In our savings, currently right now, before our first January payment due on the Boundary House, I have 22 months of runway. That's if I keep my W-2 job, right? If we spend a little bit more, drops down to like 15 based on the math that I did in the Excel sheet. If we really tighten the belt and get even more strict, we have 27 months of expenses with runway down in the house. And that singular math equation calmed me down more than anything else. And I'll kind of pause there and let you jump in with any questions you may have, X, on how we pulled those numbers together and what we did. Because you were along the process because I was calling you every day when I was freaking out.
Did you, so I know you mentioned like you were, your gas, your estimate a little bit higher. Were you taking a look at, like, were you downloading your transactions for like the last 30, 60, 90 days to see like how much you were spending on certain categories and then just input them into the Excel sheet?
Yeah. So we did the rolling 90 days. So 90 days was pretty much the most expenses that we've spent because like 90 days ago, not super disciplined. Last 30 days, much more disciplined. So we wanted to make sure we took an average. And then it was actually like $325. But some of those times I wasn't driving to San Diego as much. So I just wanted to make sure I had it because basically every week I'll be driving back and forth from San Diego at least one time, which is a tank of gas, which at this prices right now is about $47 for me. So you think at least once a week I'll be doing $47.
Did you factor in, because I know you said you negative $2,000, like you're going to be fine in terms of reserve wise. You have another lever to pull if it really got to that point where incorporating credit cards into it, right? Not the route that you want to go, obviously, but there are things where like, hey, maybe the gas you start putting on your credit card and then you make those payments. Have you thought about that process or that strategy as well?
Yeah, it did cross our mind because, you know, we were looking at different options. I would say like we were going to say, okay, let's try to stay away from any of that because this income calculation does not include a dollar coming in from Airbnb on the 4-bedroom, 2-bath house in San Diego, which I'll dig into a little bit, but has already proven to be false. So that was with $0. So what it basically told me is, Nick, you need to figure out a way, either through real estate commissions, through DoorDash, through Uber, well, Lyft typically, because you get to keep 100% of your tips. Not a bash on Uber, but maybe like a promo for Lyft. Resume writing. I could collect these goddamn scooters again if I needed to. Like, you just have to make $2,000 a month. When I broke it down like that, I really got a sense of overwhelming relief because $2,000 isn't that much. And then I started playing scenarios in my head, right? So at our Redlands house right now, we break even totally on expenses and on the mortgage. So our mortgage is $2,310, so $2,300, and we're bringing in about $2,700. So with that difference, that covers all of our bills. So we're basically net even on that mortgage. If I move out of my master bedroom, I'm going to be getting $1,500 a month or something like that. And then, so now all of a sudden that number now, instead of becoming $2,000 after reserves and expenses, now becomes $800 or $1,100 or $1,000 because now I have that additional income in the renting my bedroom out that's in the Redlands house. So it was really able. And then if you take that math, you take it from 24 months of reserves to 44 months of reserves, which is almost 4 years. And that's if my paychecks keep coming in. And that let me know, cool, make sure you're being an amazing W-2 employee, and then make sure you have a backup plan in case that does fall through. So that, again, like, it led to that calming effect. I could Uber in San Diego Fridays and Saturday nights if I really needed to, or Lyft, and make $1,000 to $2,000 a month extra.
And or, as our buddy that we interviewed not too long ago shared, you can donate plasma if it came down to it.
If it came down to that, I'd give some of that sweet plasma.
What was your anticipated monthly revenue for your San Diego Airbnb?
So that's a great question. So if you run the numbers on AirDNA, the property should gross anywhere from $144,000 to $166,000 annually, which is $12,000 to $13,000, $14,000 a month, which is a very high number. That's annual based on the bedroom count, the size, the backyard amenities, all that kind of stuff. And with that math, we'd be living for free in beautiful San Diego, which is what we ran our pro formas on when we underwrote the deal. Now, I'm a huge proponent of investing from financial strength, and I can tell you guys this. I ran all these numbers ahead of time. Before I put the down payment on the house, before I even put the offer in, I ran all the deals. I ran my expenses on the house, how much it was going to come, income it was going to produce. I calculated my lowest point of break even. I calculated my highest return it could possibly be. I looked at all of our income coming in, and I knew on October 31st, before I put in that offer, or before we closed, I was going to be fine. We were going to be able to afford this house if the Airbnb made around $2,500 a month, which would be, I could sleepwalk at $2,500 a month. That's one booking on a weekend, on an expensive weekend if they book without the discounts on there. And I knew that. But for some reason, we bought the house, we closed, we started getting ready for Airbnb, we listed it. And it's like, I forgot all of that math I did, because I found the Excel sheet that I ran before the offer, and it says the same goddamn information that I have on this one. But for some reason, I just totally forgot, and I have no idea why.
Well, I think it becomes real once you actually acquire the property, right? Because before it's all theoretical, like, yeah, it can happen. But then you're in the property, you're swiping to purchase things, you're getting it ready. There's a setup cost associated to it. And then 3 days go by, you haven't got a booking, you're like, oh shit, like, am I screwed now?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, no, you kind of already took that into effect. And you have other levers to pull as well. If, things are not as hard for Airbnb for whatever reason, you can always look at like midterm rentals, travel nursing. Like, you can definitely leverage, or even if it truly came down to something where it's just like Airbnb just went obsolete and San Diego's no longer a tourist destination. Okay, well then long-term rental, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can still get some, like, worst case scenario, like, you'd still be okay.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to, like, record this episode. So just so you guys know, I texted X at like 4 a.m. his time, because I couldn't sleep during one of these nights, and I said, hey, I just figured out all this stuff. We need to record this on a podcast so we can show people. I'm pretty good at running numbers. It's like one of my strong suits, I would say, is like underwriting deals, especially house hacks. I've been doing it for 4 years now, basically, and I've helped people buy their house hacks, and I bought my own. You will still get that. And I don't know if you call it imposter syndrome or just worry, like that financial weight, it will mess with your mind. And you need to make sure you feel comfortable falling back on your numbers and doing the math, and make sure you do that before you offer, because then you're investing from a position of financial strength. And then once you start to freak out because you painted the house and you put in the new appliances, and then your room rentals aren't going as quickly as you thought, and you're starting to freak out, I'm going to have to pay this $3,800 mortgage on myself. Pull back up that Excel sheet, run yourself through the numbers again, call someone that you trust in the real estate space and explain the situation, and they will give you the feedback to make sure that you calm down and you're making the right decision.
Yeah, Nick, another piece I was going to add to it is, if you plan, let's say, for example, you have 5 months of reserves when you purchase the property. If you go through 1 month, maybe 2 months of reserves, like, you don't have to necessarily freak out yet because you prepared for it. Right? Just because if you start using the contingency plan, I wouldn't say you have to press a panic button, because you built that in for a reason, right? Just to be safe. Now, if you had no contingency plan, then you definitely be in a hard spot. But because you planned for, hey, I have X amount of months where I'm going to be okay. If 1 month did not work out the way that I thought it would, I still have 11 more months to make that happen.
Yeah. And what I'd say is important is, in my situation, my wife and I did take out a loan on our 401k to afford the down payment. Cause like, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I didn't have 15% down on a $1.45 million purchase price. If I did, probably wouldn't be freaking out. But yeah, I had to take a loan on my 401k, and I made the decision to take out more than I mathematically needed because I wanted to have 4 to 5 months of cash on hand, liquid money that I could spend in case anything went wrong. And I thought then, I was like, yeah, it's kind of a dumb decision because I'm borrowing at like, 6% against myself on the 401k. And this cash is just going to sit here and be eaten up at 7.5% of inflation. I'm so happy I did that, dude, because without that, it's not even like we'd be in a bad position. Because again, like we have $2,000 a month of expenses to cover. We could still hold the property forever without it making a dime. But I would be freaking out. And what I would tell people is the lesson learned for me on that one. And I'm glad I learned this lesson before I even having to go through this almost like, this is like a fugazi lesson. It's like not real. Nothing really bad happened, but it's just made me feel like shit. So I want to share with all you guys. So when you feel like shit, when you buy your first property, you think it's totally normal. Make sure you have expenses saved up. You have that runway. I would say when you close on your property, have at least 3 to 4 months of expenses so that you can audible, like X is talking about, in case you have to draw into it. But I feel like it's Murphy's Law real estate. And here's why I say it's Murphy's Law real estate. I have had 6 figures of saved money in my bank account for the last probably 9 months since we started house hacking. And again, it took us time to build up there because we wiped out a lot of our savings when we first bought 2.5 years ago. But I've had a lot of disposable income just sitting there waiting to put down on this house. Well, then I put all this money down on this house, and guess what happens? My microwave breaks in Redlands, $200 expense. My tankless hot water heater goes out, $5,600 expense. We don't get bookings in our Airbnb right away. So like all of those things seem to happen. And I'm convinced the universe wasn't telling me that I had overextended myself, but it was basically telling me, hey, if you don't have any money, when bad shit happens, it really messes with your mental state. But versus if I would have had 8 months of expenses in cash sitting there and bad stuff would have happened, that $5,600 expense, $200 expense, it hurts way less because you know you have the financial runway to handle it.
And I think this is where first-time investors will fall into this trap where they play around when they're doing their analysis. Like, I only have to do maybe 4% for CapEx or maintenance. Like, I really don't have to do that much. Or utilities are really not going to be that high. I can lower it. You're not setting a realistic budget and analysis for yourself. So then when you purchase that property or it's a house hack, whatever it may be, you go into it. Now you're underwater and you're like, this is bullshit. Real estate doesn't work. It's not for me. Like, it doesn't work. Like, well, it does. You just have to be able to know, like, how to actually run your calculation to be realistic about it. You don't go to the gym and you just wait there and be like, okay, I'm ready. No, pick up the weights.
Yep.
Actually do some workouts and over time you'll see. So I think that's where people fall into that trap where they try to do things to make the deal work, where it's like, hey, be realistic with yourself. And if it doesn't work out, if the numbers don't show it, move on. Don't be emotionally tied to it. Find something that's going to work for you.
Yeah, I would say too, like, run it, like to your point, run it as if you're trying to make the deal not work. Like, do 5% vacancy instead of 3, do 10% CapEx instead of 5, whatever the math is. Like, do the math appropriate. Because what I did is I took my occupancy. So in AirDNA, this occupancy was going to be 79%. I planned it at 70. It said my average daily revenue per night would be $551. I planned it at $450. So I took off 10 to 15% from all those numbers to make sure that I was like super comfortable in that space. And the reason I did that before I ran the deal, because I was clear-headed and I could think logically. But then I was put in a position where I felt like my financial security was being challenged and I couldn't think clearly. So I had to revert back to the system. And this is where I think your friends and family are so important. There were 2 people I called about the situation. Both understand real estate. Both would be honest with me, even if it hurt my feelings, and both actually care about me. That is you, X, and my mom. So I called my mom and I was like, I'm freaking out and blah, blah. She's like, honey, I looked at all your underwriting. You need to calm down. get up an Excel sheet and write it all down. I think you're going to feel better. And you gave me the same exact feedback, except you didn't call me honey, which is slightly offensive. But you were like, dude, calm down. You're running numbers. You're good at this. Like, you're great at running deals. You need to just rerun it, make sure you feel better. I did that. And I calmed down. I was able to work through my own emotions. I was able to be much nicer to my wife, who's working her ass off to get this place ready. But then, you know what also happened next? We got 2 bookings back to back, starting 6 days after I was freaking out. On the 23rd to the 28th, we have back-to-back bookings here. It's going to net us like, I don't know, it's like $2,100, $2,200. Well, there goes my cash flow to cover for January. Well, guess also what happened 3 days after that? We had a $2,500 booking across 3 nights in February from a guy coming into town from Chicago. Well, there's the cash flow for February to pay for March to make sure I'm not dipping into my reserves. So it's like the universe was like putting it back on me, like, you're going to be okay. And I feel like if I didn't do that math and I didn't do that Excel sheet, then I wouldn't have such a positive outlook on those bookings. Instead, I would be like, well, we had to have the first 2 ones go at a discount because they weren't booked far enough in advance. Like, it would have just messed with my mindset even more.
Your mind, I think it's probably one of the biggest challenges you'll face, right? Where you create all these different scenarios in your head and you're just like, oh shit, like, I'm screwed. This is not, like, it's all just the negative things going. It's the same thing when, like, you're putting something off for, like, maybe work or something. It's like, man, I really don't want to do this. It sucks. And you spend all week dreading it. And you finally sit down and you're like, oh, I knocked that out in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. But I spent the whole week just dreading. Like, same thing here. Or if you're worried about something, hey, take a deep breath, calm down, take a look at things, pull up your spreadsheet, do what you have to do, knock it out. Because if not, you're real. Dude, I'm sure that it's such like an emotional tax too, and like draining just thinking about it. And then you're just like, did I make the right decision? You know, did I just fuck myself over? Like, oh my God, like there's so many different thoughts that go into your mind. And it could be normal sometimes, but just like it really separates those that continue to do it and actually persevere versus those that decide to quit, be like, I don't want to handle the stress.
Yep. And if you run your numbers ahead of time and you do the numbers correctly, which I did, you're going to be able to fall back on that and feel better. Because if you don't get your mind under control in that space, because it's okay to freak out. I freaked out when I first bought my house hack, and my mortgage is $2,400 a month, which I could easily afford between my wife and I. And it took me 2 days longer to paint the house than I thought, and I was losing my mind. It was like the same problem, but on a much smaller scale. You got to get your mind under control, or else it's going to go places where you don't want it to. I was thinking about foreclosure. I was thinking about, how am I going to keep this property? I was thinking about, oh my God, I'm going to be having to figure out how to do this and sell more houses. And then I was like, I was really starting to lose my control, and it was making me a worse husband. Honestly, like, my wife, thank God she put up with me for those like 5 days, because I was miserable to be around. I mean, you probably even felt the energy through like text messages. It seemed different, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, you gotta get under control, and the way you can do it is by running the numbers properly.
Yeah. And I think, and maybe this is just a different way of looking at it, but when you let me know about what was going on, like, I just wasn't worried. Like, I was being mindful of just like your emotions and what you're going through. I'm like, that's normal. But at the same time, I didn't want to minimize, like, I didn't want to say, hey, it's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, during that time for you, it was, but it's one of the things where it's like, hey, he's going to figure it out. Like, he literally just needs to sit down and just do it, and he's going to be just fine. Then I woke up the next morning like, I got it. Everything's okay.
It's like Gru from Minions, light bulb. Yeah, man, it was interesting, and the reason I wanted to share it on on the podcast is, yeah, we're not hitting hundreds of thousands of listeners yet, but X and I are investors, and we feel this way. If you're just buying your first deal, if you're just getting in your first property, if you're just investing into the stock market and it just dipped 22%, if you just bought a bunch of crypto from FTX and you got wiped it all out, understand, like, these moments of highs and lows will come while investing. And the reason I am so financially secure, even though I may not make a dollar off this Airbnb, is because I am a high income earning W-2 employee, and I have dependable income coming in. And I think that's such an important thing to remember. It's like being a super person, like, or a superhero. You can be a superhero with a W-2 income because it is not going to be taken away from you unless you get laid off or whatever the case may be. But then, you know what the worst thing is? You'll typically be able to find another job. And that's where, if you make yourself indispensable and really employable, you're not going to have that issue going forward.
Exactly.
All right, that's it. That's all that I wanted to share on my soapbox. Any other questions?
That's it, man. No, that's. I appreciate you sharing. I think the audience are going to take away quite a bit from this as well. And again, it's good to talk through some of these things and share our learnings because, yeah, throughout this podcast, guys, like that's really our intent is one, bring you guys great content. Talk about through certain topics, what helped us, getting certain guests on to be able to hopefully help you as well. But you're pretty much in this journey along with us, right? We're only a couple of properties in. Like it's not going to stop there. We're going to continue to acquire properties. We're going to continue to build, and we're probably going to fuck up. But during that time, we're going to go ahead and hop on this mic, hit record, and we're going to talk about it. So hopefully you guys can learn from some of the things that we're doing or not to do. So thanks for sharing, Nick.
No problem. All right, guys, we are the W2 Amigos. If you're looking to connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, we are the W2 Amigos podcast, or I'm sorry, the W2 Amigos. If you can, please leave us a rating and review, and also share this episode possibly with a friend or a family member, just to make sure that we are reaching as much as we can in terms of audience. If you want to reach out to me, figure out how to screw up your own Airbnb like I did, reach out to me at the Five Family. That is Instagram and TikTok. And then obviously, if you're interested in investment property, regular property in Southern California, you know where to find me.
Yeah, if you want to know how not to screw up your Airbnb, you can find me at XavierMarin _ Instagram and TikTok. Nick, I'm just fucking with you.
No, it's fine because I actually called you and was like, what mistakes am I making? And you're like, dude, your listing looks fine. Calm down.
Yeah, it's all okay. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
But can I get a discount though?
You can. Friends and family discount if you can show me proof of your 5-star rating and review on the W2 Amigos podcast.
Done.
All right, guys, that is it for now. We appreciate it, and we hope you enjoyed the vulnerability in this episode, and we'll see you next time.